most of you have heard already. Breaking news. Heavyweight contender Jarrell Big Baby Miller has tested positive for the banned substance GW1516 ahead of his scheduled challenge of Unified World title holder Anthony Joshua. 3 sources with knowledge of the results told ESPN on Tuesday night the fight is due to take place on June 1st at New York's Madison Square Garden and serve as Joshua's American debut. The results, which came to light on Tuesday, were from a random voluntary anti-doping association conducted urine test Miller submitted to on March 20th. Ironically, Miller accused Joshua of using PEDS during their press tour to announce the fight. Now, before we even get into my reaction to this news that is still breaking, you may be wondering, like I was wondering, just what exactly is GW1516 and what does it do? Well, apparently, it boosts athletic endurance by 70%. I'm not going to get my bifocals and lab coat out and start tweaking with the beakers as far as how the drug aids, in a user's endurance, just how exactly does the benefit work. But essentially, the benefit of taking the drug is added endurance. And for someone as big as Jarrell Miller is, who's a big guy even for the heavyweight division, this is a guy that walks around at 300 plus pounds. It all makes sense that someone his size, with the kind of work rate that he's got, which is already a bit of a red flag. I mean, this is a really big guy that can really go where most other heavyweights would tire out from having thrown so many punches per round. Jarrell Miller is sizably bigger than those guys, yet can continue to throw punches round after round, even though he's such a big guy. Now it all kind of makes sense. Now it all makes sense why Jarrell Miller never joined the clean boxing program. I did a video not too long ago, and I'll leave the link to that video in the description box, how some people might find it suspicious that Jarrell Miller decided not to join the clean boxing program, that the reasons that he gave for having not joined the program, they just don't cut it. That before you go pointing the finger at Anthony Joshua and trying to cast an air of suspicion over him and whether or not he's a clean athlete, some people can look at you
and be suspicious
and have those same suspicions. If anything, you've given them more precedence to have suspicions because you decided to not join the clean boxing program, even though you were the same guy that was advocating for a Deontay Wilder fight. Well, if you want to fight Deontay Wilder, it's like a lot of people forgot. That used to be a fight that Jarrell Miller was campaigning for, and suddenly things changed. Suddenly, I guess he just didn't want it that bad. Decided not to join the clean boxing program.
Why?
Well, that effectively puts the kibosh on you fighting Deontay Wilder, because if you would have wanted to fight that guy, you would have had to have been enrolled in the program. Thus, you would have had to get tested. And something very similar applies here with Anthony Joshua. Whether it's UCAD or the fair boxing program, which is pretty much like the clean boxing program, except it's the WBA and VADA and not the WBC and VADA. But all the same, it's VADA. It is VADA. I think that Jarrell Miller, call me crazy, but he's been able to fly under the radar with whatever it is that he's been doing because he hasn't been confronted with someone that could impose random drug testing on him. Whereas with Anthony Joshua, look, if you want that fight, you got no choice. This guy gets tested all the time, and if you want to fight him, then you've got to get tested too. And that's why this is just now coming to the light. And I'll tell you, at minimum, regardless what happens, whether the fight gets scrapped and they've got to find a replacement, because they do have enough time to find a replacement. From now till June 1st, they do have enough time to find someone to stand in for Jarrell Miller. That in and of itself poses certain challenges, and we'll talk about those challenges. But right now, what I want to address is that at minimum, whether Jarrell Miller is out and someone else is in, or by some chance the fight goes through, he gets off on some kind of technicality, at minimum what this does is tarnish his reputation. Tarnish, think about it. You were the accuser. You were the one standing there accusing Anthony Joshua of being a dirty fighter, and yet you're the one that pissed hot. Seems to me that in that situation, what was really going on was you were projecting your own inadequacies, your own foul play on someone else due to a guilty conscience. You were projecting your flaws, your shortcomings on another fighter because you couldn't imagine that, a guy like this
is clean.
He's a clean athlete. You don't see it that way, but you don't see it that way because you're not a clean athlete. That's the bottom line. I'm a firm believer in innocent until proven guilty. And the reason that I'm a firm believer in innocent until proven guilty is because, look, we can all have our suspicions about any myriad of fighters for any myriad of reasons. We can all have our suspicions. But at the end of the day, you're innocent until proven guilty. And if you are truly guilty, if you are, the truth will come out. It's only a matter of time. You can only cover it up, but for so long. All this stuff will reach the light of day. For Jarrell Miller, that's what just happened. Shit, not too long ago, Wilder's little brother, he pissed hot. And you know, I saw it when the news broke. I chose not to react to it because, well, talking about Wilder's a pain in the ass. Just imagine talking about his little brother, who nobody gives a fuck about anyway. I mean, who gives a fuck about Wilder's little brother? When he get, like, knocked the fuck out of something. Anyway, the point is that I'm a firm believer in innocence until proven guilty. I'm a firm believer in that because it's only a matter of time and a matter of patience. That you can only obscure the truth for so long. You can only get away with this, but for so long. And for Jarrell Miller, it appears that time is out. Now, this news is breaking. We don't have all the particulars. We don't know how he's going to try to explain this, or if maybe this substance is something that was recently added to the list, or maybe it wasn't. Maybe it's been there for years, and, you know, who knows? It could be any variety of things. But at minimum, what I'll say, for someone who's been as vocal as Jarrell Miller has been, in trying to cast an air of suspicion over Anthony Joshua, my, how the tables have turned. I mean, the fucking irony, you just gotta appreciate that shit, you know? Then again, sometimes the truth is staring you right in the face, and you just gotta, you know, focus your gaze. A guy who is 300 plus pounds, real big guy, athlete, has a work rate that's phenomenal for a man his size. I mean, the average guy that's 50 pounds or 60 pounds lighter than Jarrell Miller in the heavyweight division, they don't throw as many punches as that guy. They don't have the work rate that guy's got. And that same guy, you know, he just so happens to have not wanted to enroll in a program that would see him getting tested randomly throughout the year. Coincidence? I think not. I maintained my suspicions in regards to Jarrell Miller due to these reasons. There were several flags associated with that fighter. But above all else, I felt the man is innocent until proven guilty. And once guilt is established, the way it has been established with this positive test, then we can have the discussion. Then we can vilify the fighter and talk all the talks. And you know, Jarrell Miller, he just shot himself in the foot, and he may have costed himself a whole lot of fucking money. A whole lot of fucking money looking for a competitive edge. Now, as far as the venue, the fight date itself, all of it, I am holding out hope that it doesn't all just go to shit and get canceled. I'm hoping that there's enough time, and I think there is. There's enough time to find someone to replace Jarrell Miller in the event that he cannot, you know, that he is not allowed to compete, which is likely. I mean, it is likely in this situation. You know, I don't know who they could really conjure up. I mean, you could throw the name of Dillian White in there, but lest we forget, this is intended to be Anthony Joshua's American debut. So Dillian White, you know, two UK guys battling it out at Madison Square Garden, I'm not sure how that helps the situation. It is a contingency, but would Dillian White even take that fight on this kind of notice? Not sure? Don't really think so. There is the name of Kubrat Pulev, who he is Anthony Joshua's IBF mandatory, even though that mandate hasn't come down yet. But that would require Eddie Hearn and Matchroom to reach a deal with Bob, ESPN, and Pulev. Pulev's got his own situation with the sushi broad, you know, the kiss in the mouth. Yet another situation that I chose not to touch on because, you know, I mean, it's just not really, you know, it's not relevant to the sport. It involves one of these sportsmen, but it's, you know, it's a whole fucking thing. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'll talk more about it in the future.
Nah, I won't.
Thing is, like I said, Pulev is an option, but I'm not sure how viable that option is because that would require cross-promotional and cross-network dealings. I don't know that Bob isn't going to try to hardball these guys given how competitive the market has become. And Pulev just fought, so I doubt that he's going to be in any hurry to rush right back in there off of that nasty cut. You know, he might have beat the brakes off of Dinu, but before he did, he got a real nasty cut over his eye. Not sure that's all healed up and ready for action. Now, I'll say this much. Given the circumstances, and these are extenuating circumstances, by the way, but given the circumstances, I've no doubts that Eddie Hearn covered all the bases because all the talk, you know, what talk there is, coming from Matchroom, coming from Eddie Hearn, it does appear like Anthony Joshua is going to fight in June with or without Jarrell Miller. I mean, at least that's the official word from Eddie Hearn himself via his Instagram account, that Joshua was going to fight regardless.
There's still hope.
So, and with those things in mind, I've no doubts that they have a plan B, that they have a contingency opponent, that they have a second string opponent on speed dial should something happen to Jarrell Miller. You know, because lest we forget, the Pulev fight, the IBF ordered that fight, Pulev pulled out, but Eddie Hearn already had Carlos Takam on speed dial, you understand, as a second string. That's how Joshua was able to satisfy the mandatory with Takam, because Takam had already agreed to step in if, you know, something happens to Pulev. Something did, he stepped in, the rest is history. So I have no doubts that Eddie Hearn has a similar situation going on. The challenges, however, lie in whether or not that second string opponent has the same ability to sell this fight the way Jarrell Miller had the ability to sell this fight. Because lest we forget, the fight's in New York, and Jarrell Miller's a New York native. He's from right there in Brooklyn. To top it all off, Jarrell Miller knows how to talk shit. You understand? He talks more shit than a little bit. Some people like it, some people don't. But it creates a buzz, and that buzz does help to sell a fight. Remember the presser at the Zone when he pushed, you know, he shoved Anthony Joshua? People were talking all day about that shit like it was some kind of big fucking deal, you know? That's what Jarrell Miller brought to the table. That maybe you're not impressed with his professional record. Maybe you're not impressed with, you know, the people that he's beat or how he fights. Maybe you're not impressed with all of that. But at minimum, he can play the role of a guy that you don't fucking like. So you may relish the opportunity to see him get beat the fuck up. One way or another, it helps sell the fight. The challenges now lie in whether or not the second string opponent, the plan B opponent, can help sell this fight the way Jarrell Miller was helping to sell this fight. Is the opponent even an American? Is the opponent someone who we've seen before? I have no doubt that they got somebody on speed dial. The question is who?
We'll find out.
Now, there's already an outcry for Anthony Joshua to give Luis Ortiz that opportunity. And I'll tell you the truth, I really wouldn't mind a situation like that. Given these circumstances, it does have its virtues. The viewership that Luis Ortiz and Deontay Wilder got for their fight that was at the Barclays, the viewership that they got, it was actually very good. Luis Ortiz is someone that some people are familiar with. Not everybody has a high opinion of him. Some people do, some people don't. But at minimum, there are virtues to a fight like that. You know, at minimum, it would give Wilder's critics what they want. They have this inflated opinion of Luis Ortiz. Not sure why, but whatever. They have an inflated opinion about that guy. They feel that Joshua should fight that guy. On the other side of the argument, it gives Anthony Joshua and his fans the chance to silence his critics by actually staging that fight. The only question with a fight like that is, would Luis Ortiz take that fight under these circumstances? Would he be willing to step in on this kind of notice? And if so, what's his price? You know, a lot of guys, they get around a money man, and all of a sudden, they're too good for everything. You know, that's not enough money. I need more, even though they fight for less money than that on a regular basis. That's a situation that could arise too. That, I don't know that they wouldn't offer him the fight, but if they did, that doesn't mean there aren't challenges. That doesn't mean that there aren't obstacles that may, pop up. I'll say that I don't dismiss the virtues of a Luis Ortiz fight with Anthony Joshua. I don't dismiss the virtue of seeking him out as an opponent if they choose to do that. I don't dismiss it. I'll just say that I'm not holding my breath. That's what I'll say. I wouldn't mind it, but I'm not expecting it either. Now I already know what the conversation is going to turn into if Anthony Joshua saves the date, fights at Madison Square Garden, but it's not against Luis Ortiz. I already know what the usual suspects is going to turn that into. I already know what it's going to be about. And several videos will be uploaded of non-stop bitching and moaning from guys that were never going to be happy anyway, no matter what this fucking guy did. I'll go as far as saying that if by some chance Anthony Joshua gave Luis Ortiz that opportunity and beat him in the process, these motherfuckers that's doing all the bitching and moaning, they wouldn't give him credit for that shit anyway. How do I know? Because the same bitching and moaning they're doing for Luis Ortiz, they did for Guillermo Rigondeaux, yet another Cuban school fighter, okay? They advocated night and fucking day that Vasyl Lomachenko fight that guy. They said video after video, Bob Arum's not gonna make that fight. He's gonna protect his cash cow, his great white hope, yada yada yada. That's what they said in video after video. The fight gets made, Rigo decides to quit, and what do? They deny Vasyl Lomachenko the credit for having beaten the guy that they said was gonna beat him. After the fight, they didn't give him any credit for it because they were never looking to give him any credit. They were just looking to talk shit. So when I see this situation with Luis Ortiz, I just see history repeating itself, that Anthony Joshua could go ahead and fight that guy.
Wouldn't matter.
He could fight that guy. You motherfuckers aren't gonna give him credit for that because you were never looking to give him credit. You were just looking to cry and complain. I mean, these guys are sitting here crying and complaining at Triple G's next opponent. A guy who most people don't know, an unheralded middleweight who is not in the top 10.
He is undefeated.
And I get that. I understand that. But at the end of the day, if you're okay with Gervonta Davis fighting fucking Hugo Ruiz, and you were okay before that when it was supposed to be Abner Mares, Abner from 126, who was coming right off a loss, you were okay with that. You were okay with Gervonta Davis fighting Jesus Cuellar. Guy hadn't had a fight in 2 years. He was coming off a loss, and he wasn't even a 130-pound fighter. You were okay with all of that. So you lose your fucking mind when Triple G fights an undefeated middleweight, having not fought in a very long time. It's clear to me that you were never gonna be happy no matter what the fucking guy did. So it's not an assessment, it's just you pointing a camera at your face and talking a bunch of shit.
Bunch of stupid shit.
That's why when I see what could happen and what the conversation could turn into, just prepare yourselves for that shitstorm, because that's what they're gonna do. It is not their intention to assess, analyze,
Call it down the middle.
and call a situation down the middle. That is not their intention. That is never their intention. Their intention is to simply flap their fucking gums and talk a bunch of shit.